Hey guys, what's up? I'm Dusty Smith and this is the Cult of Dusty. Today I'm going to tell you about something that really happened to me when I was a kid. Now when I was a kid I went to a Pentecostal church. Now if you want to know what it's like going to a Pentecostal church, just think of a voodoo ceremony mixed with a snake handling ceremony and then back the crazy up just a little bit, and that's a Pentecostal church. Now of course I was raised in it, so I didn't really see it as crazy as most people would. But it was really crazy thinking back. I mean, you had people jumping up, dancing in the aisles, throwing their hands up, speaking in tongues, flopping all around like they're in a voodoo ceremony. It was really fucking creepy and weird. And one of the things I remember very clearly is that people used to speak in tongues all the time. They used to stand up and just out of nowhere go, and you know, as a kid I was like, what in the fuck are they doing? So I would lean over to my mom and I'd be like, Mom, what are they doing? And she was like, they're speaking in tongues. And I was like, why are they speaking in tongues? And she said, it's so the devil can't understand what they're saying. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense. Because, you know, I was a 10-year-old kid. I didn't know any better. So one day, and I remember this very clearly, somebody jumped up and started speaking in tongues right in the middle of church. And they jumped up and started going, you know, the stupid shit they do. And then as soon as the person who's speaking in tongues sat down, some other dude jumped up like he was in a trance. And he started speaking in a real monotone voice. And he started saying shit like, my children, I am upon you. I am in the room with you right now, and I bring many blessings upon you. As long as you follow me and my words, nothing shall harm you, my children. I give unto you this word, my promise, my gift to you. So of course, immediately, I look over at my mom, and I'm like, what is he doing? And she explained, oh, he's just translating what the guy who was speaking in tongues is saying. And immediately, of course, I'm a 10-year-old kid, my first thought is, he better shut up, the devil is going to hear him. And it was at that very moment that I understood that speaking in tongues was bullshit. Complete and utter bullshit. I never once in my entire time I was in church felt like jumping up and speaking baby talk. Never. And I know a lot of you out there, you know that speaking in tongues is complete bullshit. It's just bullshit. Just people jumping up saying gibberish that doesn't mean anything. And even though you know that some of it is bullshit, you know, like people speaking in tongues, or televangelists, or, you know, people flopping around on the floor like they're having a fucking epileptic seizure, deep down inside you know that that is bullshit. But you just can't admit to yourself the real truth, which is that it's all bullshit. Every bit of it. Speaking in tongues, flopping around the floor, televangelists, prayer, God in heaven, the Bible, every bit of it is bullshit. And today I'm going to tell you a story about something else that's bullshit. Something else I've always known as bullshit. And that is falling out in the Spirit. Now, if you don't know what falling out in the Spirit is, that's when people just all of a sudden, they're praying with their hands up, la, 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 you know, ignorantly. And then all of a sudden, they just, boom, they just fucking faint, pass out, and fall down. And usually there's somebody behind them to catch them. But not always. Sometimes they just flop on the ground like a fucking dead trout. And at my crazy Pentecostal church, people were doing this all the fucking time. They were flopping around on the ground. They were fucking freaking out. And I always knew it was bullshit. Not one time in the entire fucking time I was in the church did I ever even feel a little bit woozy. Not one time did the Holy Spirit ever come to me and make me faint. I knew it was bullshit. The only people it seemed to work on was the people that didn't know it was bullshit. The retards. And at the church I went to, there was one woman in particular who was, how do I put this nicely? Let's say special. Her name was Charity. Now Charity was a really nice lady, a very, very nice lady. When my grandfather died, she was one of the few people in the church who actually came out our house and brought food and was comforting to my mother. So she was a good lady, but Charity was fucking kooky as they come, and she was one of these people that every single church that rose, she fell out in the Spirit. She would just be standing there worshiping one minute, and the next minute, bam, she was fucking flat out on the floor. Every single church service that rose, she did this. And I knew she was a fucking faker. Even as a child, I knew she was a fucking faker. Well, there was one time in particular where this really did affect me. Our church decided to go to a revival. And if you don't know what a revival is, let me explain. Basically, the church is there to brainwash you. But after a while, that brainwashing starts to wear off, and you have to go get re-brainwashed. And this is what revival is all about. It's where a bunch of churches go fill up a big, huge mega church, and then they have guest speakers and musical events, and they try to jazz everybody up and get you re-brainwashed. Well, my church decided to go to this, and we went to a huge mega church in Jackson, Mississippi, and it was giant. It was like a freaking stadium. And I was in the second row of church. They just had regular chairs there, and I was probably 15 years old at this time. And just so happened that crazy old Charity came and sat down in the chair right in front of me. And immediately I knew what was going to happen. I was like, oh shit, this bitch is going to fall out right in front of me. And I knew immediately that I was going to have to make a decision. I knew she was going to fall right back. And since I was on the row behind her, I knew that she was going to expect me to catch her when she did. So the revival goes on, and everybody's singing and clapping and dancing, but I knew the time was coming. I knew that any second this bitch was going to fall right out, and I knew that I had a decision to make. Whether I was going to catch her, or whether I wasn't going to catch her. So the whole time I was really nervous. I didn't know what I was going to do. Catching somebody when they fall back is kind of embarrassing. I was a 15-year-old kid, and being embarrassed was the last thing I wanted to do, because there was hot chicks all around me, and I didn't want to be embarrassed by having to grab this woman, because I knew she was faking. So when the time finally came and Charity did decide to fall out in the spirit, she threw up her hands and she just fell straight backwards. And the moment came where I had to make the decision to catch her or not, and I decided not to catch her. And this bitch fell straight back expecting me to catch her, and I didn't. And she hit her back on the top of the chair, flopped the center of the chair, and then rolled out to the middle of the floor in front of her and just laid there for a second. And I mean, she hit hard. Bam! She hit real hard. And I was shocked, man. I was just sitting there looking at her. I didn't know what the hell to do. So she lay there for about 30 seconds, and I don't know if she expected somebody to help her or not, but nobody did, and I certainly didn't. So eventually, after about 30 seconds, she rolled over on her knees, and she started getting up. And as she was getting up, she looked up at me, and her eyes locked for just a second. And in that moment, there was embarrassment in her face, because she knew that I knew that she was faking. We both knew that it was bullshit. And she was embarrassed, you could tell, so she turned around and she sat down in her chair, and she did not pass out one more time during the entire revival. So fast forward a little bit, and eventually we moved off, we moved to another town. But that wasn't the last of the stories I heard about crazy old Charity. Every single week that rolled at this church, she continued to get struck by the Holy Spirit and fall out. And eventually she did this so much that one time she fell out and she hurt her back really bad. And of course she expected the church's insurance to pay for her medical bills. And the church wasn't having none of it. They actually asked her to leave the freaking church. Leave the church. Now, you understand what this means, right? Even they knew she was faking. Even they knew that falling out in the Holy Spirit was complete bullshit. Because if they didn't know that, if they really believed this woman was genuinely being filled with the Holy Spirit and passing out, they would have never, ever, ever asked her to leave the church. They would have taken a collection and they would have paid her medical bills immediately. But they knew this bitch was faking. They knew she was a phony. I mean, logically, there's absolutely no way that they would really and truly ask somebody to leave the church if they really believed that they were getting filled with the Holy Spirit and passing out. They knew it was bullshit. They knew that she was just a crazy nut. And that's how I know that a lot of preachers are just con men. They know this shit is phony. They know it's fake. They know the speaking in tongues is fake. They know the falling out in the Spirit's fake. They know all the flopping around the fucking floor is fake. They know it's fake. Just like many of you out there right now who are in the Christian church knows this shit is fake. But what you won't admit to yourself is that it's all fake. Every single bit of it. From top to fucking bottom. It is all just fucking fairy tales. It's fake. The preachers know it. You know it deep down inside. You just have to have the guts to admit it to yourself. And believe me, I'm living proof. When you admit to yourself that it's all fucking fake, you'll start feeling a ton better. Because you realize that nobody needs to burn in hell for eternity. Nobody ever has to be tortured forever and ever and ever. And if you don't fucking think that's a good thing, then you're a psychopath. If you're not happy that people are not tortured forever and ever and ever, then you are a fucking psychopath. That is the very definition of the word psychopath. If you are a sane, rational person, you have to hope it is not true. You have to hope that people are not tortured forever. You have to feel that way if you are sane. Well, I got good news for you. It's not true. None of it's fucking true. Hell's not true. Heaven's not true. The Bible's not true. It's not fucking true. So if you're not a psychopath, you should be rejoicing right now. It's happy fucking times. Unless you're an insane sicko, I have just given you the greatest news anybody has ever fucking given you in your entire life. So for all you Christians out there, you're welcome. I'm glad that I could be the one to bring you the good news. For the Cult of Dusty, I am Dusty Smith. And I ain't going nowhere. Logic.
It's not too late. It's not too late. When it's time to judge my soul, when it's time to pay that toll,